So depending on when you are checking out the My Nerd World of Star Wars podcast, at the moment, we're just a handful of days away from the release and debut to the world of the Mandalorian. And I'll tell you, I don't know what to think about that. I'm excited. Don't misunderstand. I really, really am excited. But that being said, my expectations are kind of in a weird place. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll dive into all the news this week and, of course, your listener feedback. Thanks so much for checking the show out once again. For those that are listening to the podcast and don't know already, on YouTube, there is an exact version of what you're listening to. However, the YouTube version is a video version. I'm still working through some of the bugs of the equipment and trying to make it the best visual experience as I possibly can without bogging myself down in entirely too much work. But if you're listening to it and you're going, hey, I wouldn't mind checking out the video version, then head on over to YouTube and just search for My Nerd World, the Star Wars podcast, and you'll find the video version up there. And thank you so much to everybody who's reached out since the debut of the video version of a Star Wars podcast a few weeks ago with your kind words. I really, really do appreciate it. And I promise that with every episode, it should get better. So thank you so much for your patience as I sort of embrace the video side of things for the podcast. And for the record, it's exactly the same content. I'm basically recording the show just as I always do. I've just got a camera and some lighting equipment in my office/studio. All right, so before we get to Bob Iger's comments about the future of Star Wars, Disney Plus, and using that word hiatus, okay, which they used again, I just want to talk briefly about The Mandalorian and share some quick thoughts ahead of the debut on Tuesday. First off, I heard that with the launch of the app, right, of the streaming service, Disney Plus, that they may not be releasing The Mandalorian on Tuesday until 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. I really hope that's not the case. I'm of the opinion that when it comes to The Mandalorian, hey, when it's that day it's supposed to come out, put it up. When I download the Disney Plus app, I was kind of expecting it would just be there. So we'll see how that shakes out. I've only heard that from one source. I heard it on the newly revamped Jedi Council earlier today, so I thought I'd share it on the show. I'm really excited about The Mandalorian, and I don't want to downplay that at all. I've been very vocal about sort of where my focus is. You know, the movies are a bigger focus to me than the live action TV series. The saga is a much bigger focus. It's clearly right now Disney and Lucasfilm are focusing just on The Mandalorian, and I really hope that changes, and I imagine that it will with the debut of The Mandalorian next week, because my understanding of promotional material in years past when we have a saga film coming out, usually we're knee-deep into TV ads by now and new footage, and certainly the international trailer. This is the longest it's ever been for the international trailer to be released. And I've got to guess that the whole reason is because they're holding off for The Mandalorian. They want to get that launched and going, and then we'll be full throttle into the remainder of the promotion of The Rise of Skywalker. And one more quick note, since I'm talking about the promotion of The Rise of Skywalker. They released high definition, right? Really good quality versions of the poster, of the official poster for The Rise of Skywalker this week. And it's the poster that you know, but they also released a banner, a high-resolution banner. And it's the poster, right, but it's just in banner form. What's really interesting about the banner, though, and a lot of people have been picking up on this on Twitter, and it's really easy to see because there's a big blank space on it. So the left side is a sort of a cropped version of what we saw in the regular poster. But on the right, it's all black, apart from a couple of Sith dagger TIE fighters, right, some TIE daggers, and a Resistance X-Wing. The rest of it's all black. Obviously, they're going to be filling in that void once the movie is out. I guess the question is, what's that void, right? I saw I think it was Girls with Sabers had put up a comparison poster of the official poster for The Empire Strikes Back, and of course, it shows that leaning in for the embrace between Han and Leia. The Empire Strikes Back poster next to the teaser poster for The Last Jedi easily my favorite poster. I love the Empire Strikes Back poster. My guess is that it's either going to be Luke and Leia, or Luke, or Palpatine, or a combination of one of the two. It also could be, if we end up getting an appearance of Anakin Skywalker in The Rise of Skywalker, then I would imagine that depending on how big of a role Anakin plays, Hayden Christensen plays in the film, that they would probably want to include that on the poster as well. But it's just really interesting that they released this poster, and I was actually kind of shocked. I go, really? You released this banner, and you just left a big black space in there? I mean, it's still cool looking, don't misunderstand, but I'm just like, all right, well, you're hiding stuff. I get that. Cool. Can't wait to see what it is. All right, back to The Mandalorian, and then we'll dive into the news. I am very much looking forward to The Mandalorian. My expectations aren't high. I'm guessing it's going to be really good, but like most of the Star Wars promotion, we don't know anything about the story in and of itself, apart from what we've sort of heard through leaks. Nothing really major has leaked out about it. We talked last week that Entertainment Weekly ran the article discussing how this was going to have some spoiler for Star Wars, changing something of the Star Wars story that we know in a significant way. A lot of people have been guessing about that. I think there still is a very small, minute possibility it could be Boba Fett. If you follow me on the Blaster app, you probably heard me and that blast that I did earlier in the week about that. But I'm excited for the show, and I'm really just going in with just sort of straight line expectations, and I'm going to see what it is they give me and react to it. It's Star Wars, right? I know that I'll probably end up loving it, but I don't have the hype for it the way that I have the hype for The Rise of Skywalker. And by the way, if you feel the same way, you kind of feel guilty, right? You feel bad, I feel bad. Why do I should be more excited for this. I don't. I think this is what Disney wants. I think Disney and Lucasfilm want us, hey, let us present this new thing to you. Let us bring this to you, and then you can go and make a decision on your own, right? When you watch it, how good you actually go and think that it is. The one thing that kind of elevated my excitement for The Mandalorian just a little bit more was watching one of the recent television spots that came out. They're showing little teeny tiny glimpses of new footage. If you took all the promotional footage at face value, you would think that they're just spending all their time on Tatooine and some other planet that may have some vegetation. Thinking back to Rebels, thinking back to Clone Wars, knowing the individuals involved in this, my thought is that what we've seen so far is probably coming from the first episode, and this show is going to be a lot bigger in scope than what they're revealing. Time will tell whether or not they're marketing this appropriately, but it's also much different than a movie. Right? This is a streaming service. They want people to go and purchase a streaming service, and Disney's obviously not going to have any, is going to have no hard time at all getting people to buy Disney Plus. The question is, how many people are doing it just for The Mandalorian, and is it going to live up to the expectations for many people who are actually looking forward to The Mandalorian more than The Rise of Skywalker? We'll all know in a few days. And, of course, I'll be doing bonus podcasts and shows once the show makes its debut, sharing my thoughts with you guys. And again, thank you so much for checking the show out. All right, so let's start here. Star Wars Unity, newer website run by Jeremy Conrad, well known within sort of the fandom community, podcasting community. He's been on a lot of shows before. His primary content is focused on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but he does have a new entity, Star Wars Unity website. He covered this story, so I'm going to read from Star Wars Unity. Today was Disney's fourth quarter earnings result, right? IGERCon, and he tends to do a conference call. Bob Iger dropped some news, and this time it was for Star Wars. When asked about the future of the franchise, he acknowledged the hiatus of the movies after The Rise of Skywalker, the next movie in 2022, but talked about the Disney Plus shows. He said that in addition to the 3 series that have been announced for Lucasfilm, more shows are in development for Disney Plus. Now, let me stop there for just a moment. Being in development for Disney Plus, that's really a loose term. I mean, development could just mean, hey, that's a good idea, let's explore it, and it sits over there. I think if Iger is going so far as to say, I think he even said there were 3 shows in development, so I would assume this is beyond the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, Star Wars Newsnet put up a brand new article just a couple of hours ago, piecing together some of the quotes about the Obi-Wan Kenobi that have been done about the show since its announcement. Apparently, it's going to start shooting July of next year. So I imagine the first that we'll end up seeing of the Kenobi live-action TV show is going to be 2021, which I'm pretty sure is also the same year we're going to see Cassian Andor. I don't know if we're going to see Cassian Andor next week. Be that as it may, my takeaway from Bob Iger's comments is that there's 3 other shows in development beyond Cassian Andor, obviously The Mandalorian, which we'll get a season 2 next year, and the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I really hope they move forward in the timeline. Just personal preference. I want to be in the Rise of Skywalker sequel trilogy timeline and moving forward and around this era. I want that continuity moving forward. It's just a personal desire that I have. I kind of am very much a forward momentum kind of guy. And that's partly due to my job being a radio talk show host. It's always about forward momentum, and that just kind of applies to other things that I enjoy in life. I like the newness of things. I'm excited for those other shows, don't misunderstand, but I really want to see some continuity in the timeline and moving forward and getting further out and expanding upon where we are currently heading into the Rise of Skywalker. My guess is that may not happen. Maybe we'll get a Poe Dameron show post the Rise of Skywalker. That would be pretty rad. I'd be down with that. All right, getting back to the Star Wars Unity article. Star Wars Unity has reported some sort of solo spinoff or sequel is in a stage of development for Disney+. He said there were more shows coming, so there are all sorts of options where they can take Star Wars in the series format. So let's just go here. Let's go here just briefly. Are you worried at all? And email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and leave a comment here on YouTube. But are you worried at all about the small screen Star Wars and the fact that there's going to be a couple of years until we get a new saga film? I know a lot of people are making hay over Bob Iger and his comments about it going on hiatus, doing that thing with my fingers. They've been saying that all along. I think that 2022 date is still the date that's sticking out in their minds. That's a hiatus. You're looking at 2 full years. We get to the end of this year. We have all of 2021. Actually, no, that's 3 years. So you get all of 20, and then 21, and then not till 2022. That's a hiatus, and that's what I think they're still looking at. A ton of clickbaity Fandom Menace garbage sites are running. Rian Johnson's trilogy's over now because they're taking... stop it already. Until you hear something officially... No, I know you don't want Rian Johnson to do a trilogy, and that may end up happening, but as of right now, he's still doing it. He's still talking about doing it, and if anything, the success of Knives Out that he's going to have with Knives Out, because it looks like it's going to be a hit, I think is going to go a long way into Rian Johnson doing more films in the future. But I'm wondering for you as a fan, the majority of you listening, I think, are kind of like me. You focus on the saga films more so than the ancillary stuff. So I'm just wondering if there's any concern in your mind. And again, concern's a relative term. This is Star Wars. It's all great. Don't misunderstand. I'm so glad we're getting live-action Star Wars, and there will be no hiatus of actual live-action content that we can absorb. It's just going to be on the small screen. And thankfully, I've got a 60-inch TV up there, so if I turn the lights off and get up really close, I can act like I'm in the theater. But going to the theater is a different experience, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm curious how you feel. I'm curious. I'm excited. I'm happy we're getting Star Wars content. I really hope, though, they go down the road of developing a lengthy series in the same vein, and follow me here, in the same vein of Game of Thrones. I don't want a Game of Thrones Star Wars series. What I'm saying is I want a series, a live-action TV series that has that depth of mythology, right? That has that level that we as fans can just sink our teeth into and get into. Maybe The Mandalorian does that. Okay? Maybe The Mandalorian does that. Right? I would argue that Rebels did a pretty good job of that. Of creating an arc and a storyline you can follow. And Dave Filoni was not afraid of getting into some of the deep mythology in Clone Wars and certainly in Rebels. Now, Rebels was a little bit more linear, right? You had your filler episodes, but at the same time, that was a You know, that was a story throughout those seasons that had a definite arc. Clone Wars was a little bit different. That was a little bit more episodic. You had the sort of 3 episode arcs that took place, and there, of course, was a running through line with the characters and developing of mythology, but not in the same way that Rebels did, and certainly not in the same way Game of Thrones did. And that's what I want. I love this part of the fandom. And that's really what it comes from. I want the excitement of a new TV show, but I wouldn't want like a Black Mirror-esque Star Wars where we get different directors coming in and telling different stories separate from one another. No, I really think that where Disney can fill the void of a saga film, it can be in a live-action series that does what the saga films do, but over one particular series. I'm cautious to say that that's going to happen because that's what the movies do. So, like, if I'm Disney or Lucasfilm, that's got to be a really difficult choice on their end to decide how it is they want to proceed with the live-action shows, because I think the future of the franchise rests in the episodic nature of Star Wars on the big screen. Do you diminish the impact of that by doing that same thing but on the small screen over more episodes like Game of Thrones? That's a question that Disney and Lucasfilm is going to have to answer. Let's reverse engineer it. You have Game of Thrones on TV, and we'll look past the criticism. Let's just say that it was largely accepted and people enjoyed it. Okay. So you have Game of Thrones and the series on HBO. If they come out with a trilogy of Game of Thrones movies, are those going to have the same kind of weight? With an arc over 3 films that we have to wait a couple of years, considering that with Game of Thrones, you had sort of a full season's worth and many seasons worth of those tales being told. That's the part of it that I go, that's got to be a difficult line for Disney to keep. Going to the movies is an incredibly special experience. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I do not envy the position that Disney is in with the future of Star Wars. Creating the sequel trilogy was the easy move, right? Another easy move would be to continue and do 10, 11, 12, and just continue on the timeline and develop a new set of stories based off of that moves forward from where the Rise of Skywalker is. I would 100% be fine with that. There's a lot of talk that we're going to go back to the original Jedi. That's cool. You're going to do that in a series, in a trilogy. Fine. We know that Benioff and Weiss apparently were the ones that were going to helm that before they got released or left or whatever happened with their deal. I'm cool with that. But that's the future of the franchise, in my opinion. They're going to have to start over fresh and present us with an all-new Star Wars, A New Hope. And that's going to be difficult. And I really wonder how the Disney streaming service is going to fit into those particular plans. And that's probably why we're getting this hiatus. Benioff and Weiss leaving. Rian Johnson's promoting Knives Out. They're going to focus on The Mandalorian. Certainly going to look at the success of The Rise of Skywalker and then make a decision. I imagine there's probably several film ideas that are in development right now. They just haven't pulled the trigger on the one they're going to do. And if you want a really good example of that, go back to The Force Awakens. If you watch the documentary for The Force Awakens or read any of the coverage of The Force Awakens, you'll know that Rick Carter, who was one of the content creators early on, as a part of the whole Lucasfilm team, he was brought on. He's got a history within filmmaking to task the art department with creating the artwork, sort of guided artwork, right? Before they even had a story for The Force Awakens. So basically, the creative team and the artists for Lucasfilm started, creating concept art for a movie that didn't exist, for a storyline they didn't know. I imagine that's very much what's going on right now. If they were planning on doing a series of films with Benioff and Weiss that was going to take place long before The Phantom Menace, that would tell the story of the first Jedi, I imagine that the art departments within Lucasfilm are already well down the road of concept art and ideas for whomever comes in to write it, direct it, and produce it. So all that is to say that they probably have a couple of projects that are in that stage of development, and once they find out how The Rise of Skywalker does, then they'll move forward and decide what films they're going to go and do. One more comment, and then we'll move into some more of the news here. I wish we didn't have to talk about those things. I mean that. I wish that, and I suppose I could, however, because the information is out there, I kind of feel compelled to talk about it, and I am interested in talking about it. I love the creative process. I really, really do. As just a creative individual, whether it's the daily radio show that I take so much pride in, whether it's the EMBARK series that I'm writing, this podcast that I do, my Depeche Mode podcast, I love being creative and the creative process. So it's difficult to not talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff. All that being said, I wish we didn't have so much information for the behind-the-scenes stuff, right? I feel like there's so much more that could be discussed and broken down, and there's some websites that do such a better job than I do, especially places like AT Chat and Girls with Sabers that get into the mythology of it, and I love that stuff, and I love listening to it, and I certainly do on this show as well. But as a fandom, I wish that could be the focus, just the content and the stories, but that's not the case, because we live in a world now where this information becomes public so often for so many different reasons, and it's almost impossible to escape it and not talk about it. But to me, that's not the most important part of Star Wars. The most important part of Star Wars, it's you, it's me, it's our enjoyment of these stories. It's Reylo and what's going to happen with these characters. What's going to happen with these individuals that we've been following in this new trilogy and speculating on it. And what does the Force mean? That's the real heart of it. And so to put a bow on this particular conversation, that's what I hope Disney gives us, the fans, to chew on. Good, rich mythology, romance, and adventure, and aimed at kids, but still for us adults to enjoy and sort of break apart, that mirror the world that we live in, but set in this galaxy far, far away. And I hope we reach a point where we're less concerned about the directors and why they left. That part of it is just like, so, okay, Benioff and Weiss aren't doing Star Wars. Bye. They're not doing Star Wars. That's it. End of story. And let's move on. Speaking of which, let's talk about a good guy. I like good guys. You like good guys? Let's talk about a good guy.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
From Vanity Fair, Anthony Bresnikan. That time George Lucas asked a guy from Pittsburgh to join him and rule the galaxy. All right, this is kind of a lengthy article. I have made some edits here, but I really wanted to share it with you because I feel like I know so many of you that I really think that you will enjoy hearing about this and a little bit of commentary. So we'll just start at the beginning. Like everyone else, Dave Filoni grew up loving Star Wars. Unlike everyone else, he was recruited to learn from the master. Now he's an MVP on The Mandalorian. Scholars call it the monomyth. Although most of us know it as the hero's journey. The ancient storytelling structure about a nobody from nowhere who answers the call of adventure, befriends a wise elder, faces down impossible obstacles, and emerges not just victorious, but as a champion for others. Here's one hero's journey connected to a galaxy far, far away that happens to be true, and it belongs to a guy named Dave Filoni. Filoni is a cowboy, hat-wearing, hockey-loving, wolf-obsessed writer, director, and producer from Pittsburgh. He was a young animation director when George Lucas asked him if he would join him and together create the Lucasfilm founders' final run of Star Wars stories. That project was the Clone Wars animated series. It began in 2008 and ended abruptly after 6 seasons when Lucas sold the company to Disney in 2012. George moved on. Dave stayed. What Obi-Wan Kenobi was to Luke Skywalker, what Han Solo was to Rey, that's what Lucas became to Filoni. 15 years later, Filoni, 45 years old, is not so jokingly known as the Chosen One, the career of the creator's knowledge. He mixed that membership with his own skills and interests to craft the hit animated Rebels and Resistance shows, and now serves as executive producer and one of the directors on The Mandalorian. right? Scheduled to launch here on November 12th. In February, he's going to resurrect the Clone Wars for a 7th and final season. You can expect to see Filoni's name on other projects in the years to come. He's become so beloved within the Star Wars fandom that people sometimes cosplay him at conventions. Uprooting from LA to San Francisco was an easy choice for Filoni and his wife, Anne, writer and teacher. For the next 8 years, he worked side by side with Lucas, telling the battlefield stories of Anakin Skywalker before his transformation into Darth Vader. When he was fighting alongside Obi-Wan Kenobi and nurturing his own Padawan learner, the Ahsoka Tano, a young girl with distinctive white and blue head tails instead of hair, who was just as defiant and clever as her master, a metaphor couldn't be more apt. Filoni was persuasive, he could push, and the trust he earned allowed him to translate Lucas's vision in ways that strengthened them both. One day, George said, "Do you know why I enjoy working with it? Do you know why I enjoy working with you?" I'm sorry, I do a horrible George Lucas. I'm not even going to try. And I said, "No, I have no idea. This is Filoni." Filoni recalled. He said, "Well, you listen to me." Filoni lets that sink in. A lot of people think you need to come and impress someone. They think, I'm going to show you or do better. They don't always think you impress somebody by just listening. Lucas brought up the same point when Vanity Fair asked him about Filoni. "I immediately found him to be very open-minded and a great listener, which are qualities I admire because it opens a person up to new experiences," he said. Lucas didn't want to take as much credit for Filoni's success as Filoni was willing to give him. "I was just giving him advice along the way." But Lucas guided Filoni to make the series more cinematic, and they shaped each story arc together. The advice he'd give Filoni going forward: stay open-minded and realize that there's still a lot to learn. There's always something to learn. The Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau said Filoni intuitively understands how to walk the line between learning and teaching. The two became friends more than a decade ago. Jon Favreau was working on Iron Man. Filoni was working on Clone Wars. They were both together at ILM, and they ended up joining forces. Of course, Jon Favreau ended up providing the voice for Pre Vizsla, part of the mass tribe of warriors for whom the bounty hunter Boba Fett was descended. Favreau began crafting Star Wars TV show based on similar gun-for-hire anti-hero. He asked Filoni to both direct the first and mid-season episode and join him as executive producer. Favreau wanted that direct connection to the Lucas style of storytelling, and Filoni was eager to finally try his hand at live action. He'll be very forthcoming with his thoughts and opinions if he thinks that I'm going down the wrong path, or if he has something that he wants to present. But he'll pivot suddenly to learning and questioning and understanding, Favreau said. If Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy wants the insights of Lucas, she just calls Filoni. They've known each other for a lifetime. To her, Filoni isn't a vital resource because he's a Lucas encyclopedia, but because he took what he learned from him about myth, so important, filmmaking and technology, and applied them to his own heart. There isn't a thing that we do in the storytelling space that I don't check with Dave, Kennedy said. What I found out about Dave is you don't just sit down and have a discussion about the plot or review characters inside the Star Wars world. You end up having meaningful, thoughtful discussions about what it is we're trying to say inside the storytelling. He has a lot of empathy. When Filoni expressed interest in directing live action, Kennedy dispatched him on a fact-finding mission to sets of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi to watch how J.J. and Rian Johnson did it. These days, Filoni is back at work with Favreau on Season 2 of The Mandalorian while finalizing the encore of The Clone Wars. From there, anything's possible, except for leaving Lucasfilm. "It's the Pittsburgh in me," he said. "I got very comfortable." The hero's journey always ends in transformation. Of course, after all this time, Filoni has become the wise elder, and the things he learned along the way aren't his to keep. There's gray in his beard now, not as much as there is in Lucas's, maybe, but someday he'll be the one passing on what he knows to a generation who grew up loving these stories. So going back to my opening of the show, talking about the Mandalorian, my expectations, I already feel, and that's the first time I've read that article in full, by the way, I already feel exponentially better about going into that series, right? I think if it was just Jon Favreau and the directors they brought in, while I'm sure they're all talented, I might be a little bit more concerned. But considering the fact that Filoni is involved in this project and how important that mythology is in the storytelling, I think we're going to be in for something really special. At least I'm praying that we are. And again, it's just that desire that I have to want to discuss it and break it down. I want fun action adventure, and I love spaceships and space battles and bounty hunting. And I think it all just looks fantastic. You had me at Razor Crest, right? All right. You're going to really get me if you provide some real rich, deep storytelling that we as fans can dissect, break down, sink into, and apply it like we do so many other things. I love the fact that when we're talking about stuff like Reylo and relationships and dynamics in the Force, that we know that George Lucas pulled from those amazing sources of the past, those mythological stories that he grew up with, those Saturday serials that he grew up with, along with the depth of knowledge of the monomyth, of the hero's journey, the teachings and the writings of Joseph Campbell, right? That stuff is the core. It's the heart of what makes Star Wars great. And so I think we can all take a little bit of comfort knowing that Dave Filoni is in charge of this particular project and most likely, big screen projects in the future. All right, let's move forward, and we'll go to Carrie Fisher's brother. This also comes out of Vanity Fair, I believe. It's written by Ethan Alter. Still think that Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker was the last Jedi referenced in the title of the 8th episode of Star Wars Skywalker Saga? Think again. The original version of the 9th and final installment, The Rise of Skywalker, his sister Leia was going to emerge as a full-fledged Jedi warrior, complete with her own lightsaber. That's according to no less an authority than Fisher's real-life brother, Todd Fisher, who filled us in on what the plan was for his sister's iconic character prior to her sudden death in 2016. She was going to be the big payoff in the final film, Fisher reveals exclusively to Yahoo Entertainment. She was going to be the last Jedi, so to speak. That's cool, right? Okay, let me stop here real quick. There's a big question mark on this particular comment. And I think a lot of people were right to point this out, and I think I'm right to bring it up here too. That could have been Colin Trevorrow's treatment of the story. Now, that being said, we do know per some leaks that are out there that there is some elements of that may still ring true within The Rise of Skywalker. But I think there is a big question mark over that particular version was actually the version that Colin Trevorrow put together, or was it the version that J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio were picking up on. Now, if I take this at face value, I'm going to say it was Colin Trevorrow's version because this was all prior to her passing, and it was after her passing. I could be wrong. Email me or leave a comment on YouTube if I am, but I'm 99% sure that J.J. Abrams did not take over until after the unfortunate passing of Carrie Fisher, right? Okay, let's get back into the article. Cool is an understatement, the article goes on to say. It's positively wizard. That's wizard, Annie. Leia's Force abilities were teased in a key scene of Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. So great. It's the best. I love it. It's a masterpiece. Sorry if you don't agree. Sorry. And the Resistance generally appeared that it would have the chance to get even more physical in The Rise of Skywalker. People used to say to me, why is it that Carrie Fisher never gets a lightsaber and chops up some bad guys, Fisher says. Noting that Alec Guinness was roughly the same age when Obi-Wan Kenobi battled Darth Vader in A New Hope. Obi-Wan was in his prime when he was Carrie's age. Unfortunately, the version of The Rise of Skywalker where Leia picks up her father and her brother's chosen weapon can only exist in our imaginations. After Fisher's death, her alter ego's arc had to be reconceived by returning director J.J. Abrams, who previously directed her in The Force Awakens. Doing that thing with my fingers. The truth is that J.J. Abrams was great friends with Carrie. He had an extraordinary sense of love for her, her brother says. It was that love that led the filmmaker to make a bold and creative, risky decision. Take unused footage of Leia left over from The Force Awakens and make it part of The Rise of Skywalker. They had 8 minutes of footage, Fisher tells us. They grabbed every frame and analyzed it, and then reverse engineered it and got it into the story the right way. It's kind of magical. Fisher understandably declines to elaborate on how exactly Abrams reverse engineered the unused footage into a satisfying farewell to such a beloved and groundbreaking character, but he does hint that Abrams has found a way to address both losses in an emotional way. This is, in its own way, a payoff. It's Carrie talking to us from beyond. The beautiful thing about the concept of the Force is that there's no real death. You just exist in another dimension. So Carrie is looking down or sideways or whatever and is still part of us. And to be able to see that, it's magical stuff only in the movies. You know, that's got to be, thinking about it from her brother's standpoint, that's got to be such a difficult thing, right? I mean, how hard must that be? We all know how beloved Carrie Fisher was, not just by the fans, but the individuals that worked and knew her. She was just a special kind of soul, right? That led an arguably, you know, rough life. You know, obviously lots of milestones in there, but just the passing way too soon back in 2016. It's got to be difficult for her brother, but also to a certain extent lovely, right? That he gets to experience his sister on the big screen again in this final film in a way that he probably didn't think he was going to be able to. It's got to be cathartic. I can only imagine how cathartic it must be for him, for Carrie Fisher's daughter, Billie Lourd, who's in the film. I didn't realize that Billie Lourd, that was one of her first acting gigs, was The Force Awakens. And I thought that she was fantastic in The Last Jedi. I love all of her scenes in The Last Jedi. I thought she really brought some really, really fun moments. That whole opening scene in The Last Jedi where they're trying to escape Dakar and she sees the First Order show up, and then when they get off the planet right before they fire on the base. It's just fantastic. And again, I had no idea that she was new to acting, a new actress at the time of The Force Awakens. So I really hope, and I'm kind of already there in my headspace, when we first saw the footage of Carrie Fisher from the teaser trailer, and you know, the footage that we've seen so far, I know that I personally had kind of a difficult time of detaching myself from that's old footage. I've gotten past that now. And I don't know if it's just because I'm not thinking about it anymore, but I was concerned, relatively speaking, going into The Rise of Skywalker and being pulled out of the film knowing that that was unused footage or repurposed footage from previous movies. But I'm at the point now, and I think that might have even been part of the plan. Let's get Carrie Fisher in these promos to not just show the audience that she's there, but have the audience get used to seeing her this way so that they're not pulled out of those scenes. I've just now only reached the point when watching Rogue One, when we see Tarkin, that I dispel the idea of the uncanny valley and that person's not actually, you know, Tarkin there in the flesh. That's a CGI recreation. All right, one more thing, and then we're going to dive into listener feedback. Speaking of sort of coming to grips with things, I've been really having a fun time on Twitter. I talked about this last week, seeing the comments about Reylo. I watched a video today. Somebody had put a montage together of, it was Daisy Ridley, and it was John Boyega, and it was J.J. Abrams, Kelly Marie Tran, all of them being asked about Reylo in some way, shape, or form, and their answers, and seeing them all compiled together. And I did this right before I started the show today. Seeing them all compiled together brought this sense of relief to me. Like so many of you, right? Okay, I won't speak for you, I'll just speak for me. I'm keeping an open mind with how this whole movie's going to play out. I know there are things that I would like to see happen, just like you. But at the same time, treating them like they are historical documents, I am keeping an open mind and I'm ready to sort of embrace whatever it is they throw at me. That being said, seeing the commentary and the consistency of sort of redemption and the connection that these two have, and just all of the commentary around Reylo, I'm at peace going into this movie. I know a lot of you are nervous. I'm sure I'm going to get the messages from you saying as such, and let me. Please lie down on my couch and I will help assist you as we work through this together. No, for me, I'm ready to see what they're going to give us, and I trust these creative individuals. I trust Kathleen Kennedy. I trust J.J. Abrams. I don't know Chris Terrio, but I trust Chris Terrio. They know what they have to do. It's not in their best interest to go and screw it up. And so if they stuck to what they feel is the best conclusion to the story, then I'm willing to go and accept that. Even if it may not be the vision of what I think. If this is what they think is the best way to go and conclude this 9-movie saga, to close out this chapter that has meant so much to so many millions of people, you know, you don't want to screw that up. I don't think they're going to screw that up, and I cannot wait to see what they do. I really think the finale of The Rise of Skywalker, and whatever the resolution is between Ben Solo and Rey, I think it's going to be something truly epic and magical. And I'm really, really excited. I'm here for it, as I say so often. All right, a lot of you wrote this week. Let's go ahead and dive into listener feedback.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
Okay, so this week, the something inside me that's always been there is your comments, because I played the wrong clip. It happens. It doesn't feel right, though, does it? It doesn't feel like it's listener feedback, because I played the wrong one. Okay, I'll play this.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
No, I'm sorry. That's not the right one. That's not the right one either. Hold on. Let me bring up the let's bring up the right one here.
This is not going to go the way you think.
No, it's not going to go the way that I think, because it was supposed to go this way.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, truth be told, I may have just been screwing around. I saw it right there. I did click the wrong one the first time, but I was just having fun with the other ones. All right, let's start off here. Friend of the show, Anthea Gaia. Like the new format with seeing you as you do your podcast. I'm excited for The Mandalorian, but like you, not as excited as I am for The Rise of Skywalker. Kind of felt the same way about Rogue One. I like having the Force and space wizards in my Star Wars. That doesn't mean I won't enjoy The Mandalorian. It just means I probably won't be as into it as the Star Wars content that focuses on the Jedi and Sith. Good point. I don't care about Boba Fett actually being the Mandalorian. Yeah, I don't care either. It's just a theory that I had, but I'm with you. I thought that I had heard or read somewhere that he wasn't technically a Mandalorian. He's not. I've never been a Boba Fett fan, so I'm meh about that, really. I mean, he was pretty lame in Return of the Jedi. But I won't hate it if he is. I'd just rather it be somebody new. I think that's going to end up being the case. Also, I'm so happy that Benioff and Weiss will not be doing Star Wars. I did not like the last season of Game of Thrones, as you know, but was also worried me was the interview that they released of their comments regarding directing Game of Thrones. I think we dodged a bullet there. Yeah, they're gone. I'm glad they're gone. Bring on, right? Thank you. Next. Thank you. Next. Ariana Grande should redo that song. The version, by the way, there's sort of a revamped version of Thank You Next done by the 1975 that is fantastic. All right, that's all you're going to get non-Star Wars. I apologize. All right, let's go here. Stephanie Batchelor says this: you should do face cam more often. Thank you. Can I smolder? I like your stuff, even if I don't always agree with it. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it. If you always agreed with me, what fun would that be? All right, Gabriella Afrangu. If I said that wrong, Gabriella, I apologize. I love your channel. You always give great analysis on all the trilogies. I have a question. How do you think it will be? She says, how do you think it will be Ben Solo in The Rise of Skywalker with Rey? Okay, so it's worded wonky there, but I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'm going to get a little bit more into this after listener feedback, because I want to talk a little bit about Dark Empire. I'm not going to get into spoiler territory, but I'm going to ride the line for those that want to miss it. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of it. And like I said before, I'm willing to see how it's going to shake out. I think it's clear Kylo Ren's got it bad. He's hot for Jedi. It's right? It's clear. He didn't kill her in The Force Awakens when he could have just right into that chasm. No. What did he try to do? You need a teacher. I can show you the ways of the Force. Yeah, you don't. Take it from a dude. Yeah. And of course, we all know what happened. Finger touching loving in. I'm gonna get banned on YouTube for that. Finger touching loving in the Last Jedi. So We'll see how it shakes out. I'll just leave it at that. All right, let's move on. Miranda writes this, friend of the show. You probably heard this a number of times, but I'll say it anyway. One of the main things I respect about you, first and foremost, is your positive attitude and being open-minded and still be critical when you need to be in a constructive manner, but more so on the fact that you are your own person and continue to be. Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate that. Right. When it comes to Star Wars, and you don't have to be a certain way just to be popular because everybody else is doing it, if you know what I mean. Yep, I do. You just do you. I do. And have fun with it, and I love that, and that's all I wanted to say here. Thanks for all you do. Thank you so much, Miranda. You guys are all great. I honestly didn't know what to expect when I started doing this show prior to the release of The Force Awakens. I've said it over and over again. I just did it because of my love of Star Wars, and it gave me a great outlet to talk about my fandom, and my only hope was always that a handful of people would find it and enjoy it, and thankfully that's happened, and it's been just a rewarding experience, and it's comments like that, and all you guys writing in, I really do appreciate it. All right, Kelly Langley writes this, the Force Ghost thing could be sort of done like Harry Potter did in the Harry Potter scene in the Deathly Hallows. Maybe they could give advice to both Ben and Rey, but not actually get involved with the final battle like Palpatine. Like you, I would think it would be totally awesome. Yeah, and of course, that's dovetailing off of what I said last week about especially how affected I was as a kid. When it was interesting going back and thinking about the original trilogy as a kid and how you just took some of these things at face value. You didn't think about it any further. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, saying, I cannot, and you have to face Vader again. I can't interfere. Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, I can't fight this for you. You got to do it on your own. I just took it as, okay, didn't need a rationale as to why. Didn't think Obi-Wan Kenobi was a jerk. I just figured, you know what? Because he's a Force ghost, he can't get involved anymore. And that's a bummer when Luke's hanging on a weather vane at the bottom of Cloud City. Thankfully, he's connected to his sister. Of course, we didn't know that at the time. That, and also in Return of the Jedi, when he's talking with Yoda, and then afterwards he's talking with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they're talking about how, so I am a Jedi. Right? No, you got to face Vader again. I just took it at face value. I miss that innocence, man. I miss the innocence of just taking it at face value. Why does he have to face Vader again to become a Jedi? Because Yoda said he did. Done. Works for me. Nope. Unfortunately, we have Twitter now, and Twitter threads and ratioing, where people will answer their own version and provide their own headcanon of the reason why that is. And there's some good in that, but most of the time it just makes me tired. Thank you, Kelly, for the comment. All right. Arderaith writes this. I didn't see Solo in the cinema because I was still digesting The Last Jedi. Now that I've finally seen it in my chronological rewatch, and I love it, I see what they were doing. It gives some history for Ben. Those dice are going to have meaning. Just my 2 cents. Thank you very much. All right, Darlene writes this. Old friend of the show, under the old name SJs, if you remember, forced me to use my sister's account, but I want to make something clear about the leaks. All right, Darlene, bring it. I've also worked in the industry for a while, and I have tons of contacts in the industry, and I am 100% positive that the leaks came from the marketing shots that Lucasfilm gave them on purpose. That last point is important. They would not give them the most spoiled shots of the movie, so things like, I'm not going to say it, for those that don't want to be spoiled, is such a clear indication that the Jedi Paxis or whomever sent him these detailed plot breakdowns are completely conjecture. I always say that word, stumble on it. It's stitched together from what they could gather from the marketing video. They were given to cut a trailer. There's so much that is so clearly added on conjecture alone that people are taking as gospel. Darlene, I tend to agree with you. We'll all know here in a couple of weeks. Only a couple of weeks. Oh my gosh. The only thing I don't like about Star Wars coming out at Christmas time is because I love Christmas. That's the only thing I don't like about Star Wars. Like, I love that Star Wars is a part of Christmas, but Christmas can be its own thing, right? Anyway, okay, let's get back to this. Dale Erdman says this. I love it, the backdrop, the graphics, the actual U format. Talking about the video. I have a feeling the threads and tatters that could be tied up in TFA and TLJ are fine. That's what Anthony Daniels was talking about last week. And that they will be tied up in The Rise of Skywalker. Some fans won't feel satisfied. Okay. In my experience, I've noticed a lot of those fans are rejecting the ancillary materials, not wanting to depend on them to find out why things are the way they are, in, or should I say, outside of the EU. If you're watching the movies and know about the EU, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think to have a side story of Phasma or Bloodline instead of a book would be awesome, not to dismiss what Solo and Rogue One are. Thank you, Dale. All right, Blanca Salazar. I'm excited to see what Rey's journey. Rey journey will be complete in The Rise of Skywalker. I don't, but I'm always thinking if maybe Rey's purpose of all this in her journey with the Force and Kylo Ren / Ben could be her having a family, not with the Resistance, but on her own, flesh and blood, a.k.a. her children, because she's always wanted her family, also known as her parents. Why can she be a parent, create her own with Ben? What do you think about this, and keep up the great work? All right, look, I would love to see that happen. Shows ago, many shows ago, I talked about potential ending sequences for The Rise of Skywalker. Could still be the case. Chewie going back to Kashyyyk, right? Things like this. Seeing Naboo again, all that. And I talked quite a bit about the fact that it really would, at least in my view, like if I were writing this story, and again, this would be a long and lengthy process, and maybe at the end of the day, after market research, I decide differently. I don't know if that'd be the case, but I really love the idea that you've got this yin and yang, right? Dark side, light side of Rey and Kylo, and that's what life is, right? The whole analogy of the Force, darkness rises and the light to meet it. It's the balance. It's the balance that all of us have to have in our lives. We all do this. Star Wars is a different set of rules altogether. It doesn't apply to real world here. So if you sort of do the logical sort of changing of sort of what's the equivalent in Star Wars that's equivalent to real life, I love that idea of we're not all perfect. We do all make mistakes. A lot of times when we make those mistakes under the pretense that we're doing something good. Adam Driver's comments early on about Kylo Ren were spot on. Often the villain doesn't realize. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're on the right path. They don't realize they're doing anything wrong. And that rings true in real life. I've done, things in my life, not horrible. I've never been locked up or anything like that, but I've made decisions and choices in my life where at the time I was like, yeah, this is the right, true, authentic thing for Jon to do. And it wasn't. My own judgment clouded my thinking. We all go through this. That's why I love the idea of a redeemed Kylo Ren Ben Solo. That's why I do, not married to it, right? But I do love the idea that Rey's been on her own. These are a very important group of individuals, but they're obviously forging their own path. We know that, Finn and Rose, potentially something there, Zori Bliss and Poe. All of these characters have their own little units. Rey doesn't. So I personally, like so many of you, I love this idea of Ben being redeemed, having to atone for the sin, right? And in the Star Wars universe, that could mean any number of things, right? We know that he was influenced by Snoke. We know that he was deceived by a lie. We all were, right? That's what Palpatine does. He's deceitful. So in an act of courage and bravery and turning back to the dark side, I can absolutely, of course, see a redeemed Kylo Ren to Ben Solo. But on top of that, I also see where here's this individual in Rey who's best suited to go on a new path with Ben Solo. And I mean, I personally would love to see that. I don't know how the audience would handle something like that. I said it before, I'll say it again. I know many of you will probably disagree, and that's cool. But I tend to think that the ending of this is going to be somewhat ambiguous in that regard. They're probably going to do their best to sort of ride a line there of, if he makes it out in the end, it's not going to be without some kind of sacrifice. Are we going to go full on Reylo and see that connection on TV? I mean, on the big screen? I don't know. Would I be down with it? Yeah. I would love for the final shot of the movie to be Ben Solo and Rey somewhere forging their own life away from everything that just happened, right? where Ben can start anew with this person that's here to help him along the way. Again, I'm not married to it. If that doesn't happen, I'm fine with it. I'm more than willing to see what they're going to put forward. But I love that idea. Because Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, he is an incredibly complicated character. And it's a character that I relate to. Again, real world versus Star Wars world, right? I don't have a kitty litter box full of the ashes of my victims. But I've also made mistakes in my life. And thankfully, I have people around me, and I have a wife here with me who accept me for who I am, and we all are offered the chance at forgiveness at some point in time. All right, so I'm going off on a tangent, and I just got a few more comments to get to here. All right, let's go to, let's see, Jazzy. Jazzy Rosier writes this. You're such a wonderful person. Wow. Thanks. Thank you so much. And I love your podcast so much, and it's very refreshing to see your face. You really make my day with your episodes and your incredible positivity. We Star Wars fans are so lucky to have you in our life. Thank you, Jazzy. Means the world to me. All right, Dumbhead writes this. Love the name, by the way. That's fantastic. Great stuff. Love your enthusiasm. One thing, it feels weird calling Ben Solo Kylo Ren at this point, right? It's just as regressive as the mask. Maybe that's just me. What is going on with that damn mask? That's like the one thing that I want to know more than anything. What the heck is going on? Like, I don't care who the Mandalorian is. Why the hell did he put the mask back on, and why is it reforged? Thank you, Dumbhead. I appreciate it. Also follow Dumbhead on Twitter. You can find me at @MyNerdWorld or at Jon Justice on Twitter, by the way. Let's see. B, friend of the show, says this. Love the new format. Being able to see you makes everything better. Aw. So do all your nice comments. Let's see. Again, seeing comments around. They can hate all they want, but more people love Star Wars than don't. Correct. Probably since it began, Star Wars has hovered overall, whether people have seen it or not. Probably not a day over the past 40 years has there not been some Star Wars saying or characters mentioned in some place of the world. Oh, absolutely. I think it happens on the minute. For all the people who hope the Rise of Skywalker will fail, nothing is going to change the impact of the consciousness of Star Wars. Those have to live with it. Yeah, that's right. You tell them, B. I've been talked about before, but I think for some who don't like it now, they have felt that way before they even saw the first new trilogy. Yep, because it was Disney. They don't like Disney, and they were not going to like anything with them behind it. Correct. There's some who didn't want a female to be the lead. Don't care. Females are awesome. Love female protagonists. Me personally. Then the bad stuff. Then the bad stuff Kelly went through. Yep, they had 2 directors who have worked on it and with love for their subject. And they have given us one of the great Star Wars characters of all time, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. And lucky to have such an actor like Adam Driver. I know some were disappointed he didn't turn out to be a one-dimensional total bad guy, but they didn't write the story. It's moving toward just a month before. Keep up the good work, B. Thank you very much, B. All right, we got 2 more here. This comes from Patrick. Just wanted to chime in with my 2 cents on the conversation you had about Bob Iger's statement that they come out with too much Star Wars too quickly. While I agree with you that I don't think that is the issue, I think what you have to take into account is, like you have complained about Solo due to the crunch of when it came out and they weren't able to ramp up the advertising behind the movie the way they did with the others. I think that was their biggest mistake and where they still need to learn a little with Star Wars, because we're all a little upset with how they're doing the advertising for The Rise of Skywalker as well. I agree, though, that having some connective tissue between these one-off movies or a new saga trilogy would definitely help those type of movies. That is what made the MCU worth watching, and all of those movies was one-offs that sucked you in for the next movie, in my opinion. Thanks for another great show. May the Force be with you, Patrick. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I actually have 2 more comments here. One quick thing on what Patrick said, though, real quick. I think we're still in experiment phase. I think Disney knows that The Rise of Skywalker is going to be a hit regardless, okay? And they know they're going to have live-action TV shows for the foreseeable future. So in 2022, there's probably going to be another live-action TV show ramp-up leading up to the release of whatever that movie is. And what I think Disney is doing now is I think they're going to cut their losses if they end up making a mistake again. And I think this is, okay, can we promote the Disney Plus streaming app and The Mandalorian, get everybody pumped for it, bring out The Mandalorian, and then in the final weeks go full throttle in promotion for The Rise of Skywalker and still have the same kind of success? Because that's what's happening right now. Normally, we would be talking about nothing but The Rise of Skywalker, and we're not. Right now, we're only talking about The Mandalorian. For crying out loud, on the Star Wars show this week, which I still think is a massive mistake, they didn't even talk about The Rise of Skywalker at all. It was all The Mandalorian and Jedi Fallen Order. So I think they're still in experimental phase, and they're figuring out, all right, let's see what happens with this. And because this is the last one of the saga, it really is the best model in which to sort of gauge what they're going to do in the future when it comes to the promotion of the live-action shows and the theatrical films. All right, friend of the show, Misconduct 1. I just want to say we greatly appreciate all you do and the work you put into creating such a positive and fun Star Wars atmosphere. John, you're a good guy. Thank you. Definitely Jedi Master material. I'm really just a Padawan learner. Can't wait for this movie. I'm so excited. Thank you, Misconduct 1. All right, one more. ZBH writes this. Hey, John, thanks for the podcast. I also watched the Terminator Dark Fate. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I saved this one for last because he's talking Terminator. All right, so I saw Terminator Dark Fate before viewing the podcast. Overall, I liked the film, despite the opening making me really sad as a Terminator fan. I'm not going to spoil anything. I got my first glimpse of the Rise of Skywalker advertising on all the cups and the popcorn buckets, and I finally realized, oh my gosh, this movie is just a month away. Needless to say, I'm hyped for the film. However, I'm interested in your thoughts on people saying The Dark Fate was The Force Awakens of the Terminator franchise. I agree that there were similarities, but it wasn't a connection that I made before. Anyways, not trying to turn this into a Terminator podcast, but I wanted you to know your thoughts on that idea. Take care. I hadn't heard The Terminator Dark Fate in comparison to The Force Awakens. I guess I can see what they were trying to do. And I definitely see those similarities in the two films and sort of reestablishing of the lore potentially to create other movies. That's obviously not going to happen because Dark Fate bombed. There was a lot of criticism around Dark Fate. I personally really enjoyed it, but I've been very consciously heading into my theater-going experiences and dropping all the pretense and just watching the film and stripping everything out. The normal Monday through Friday gig of News Talk Radio is draining these days because the world's just gone mad, for crying out loud. That's why I love my Star Wars so much. I've been looking forward to doing this show all week, for crying out loud. So going to the theater now, I strip away any of the nonsense said by the directors over wokeness or social justice warrior stuff. Whatever. Just give me the movie and I'll judge it on its merits. Judging the movie on its merits, I thought it was really enjoyable. I liked it. I didn't have a problem with the decisions that they made. I'm sure there was very sort of wokeness reasons for it, but that's fine. I really enjoyed the film. And I personally didn't think that, there was any problems with it, even though other people did. And I also didn't have a hard time with The Force Awakens either. So there you go. All right, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for checking the show out again this week. There will be another episode up, a shorter episode, probably just audio only, but I will be posting that on YouTube in audio form as well. So if you follow the show predominantly on YouTube, don't worry, it'll be there. I'm intending on doing a video version of it, but seeing how The Mandalorian's dropping in the middle of the week and I want to get content out there, and it takes a bit to set all this nonsense up, I may end up just doing an audio version, just giving you a fair warning. But I will be putting up my thoughts out as soon as I see The Mandalorian later this week, and I can't wait. I'm so excited. If I have, I have this. I have this guy here. He's very excited as well. All right. Thank you so much for checking the show out. As always, leave me a comment on YouTube or drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. It wouldn't be me if I didn't go and encourage you to purchase a copy of my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. You can get that on Amazon. Search for Jon, Jon Justice, and EMBARK. You can get it in ebook form. Both books right now, just 99 cents a piece. Also paperback and audiobook, narrated and produced by me. I am down to the last 10,000 words of book 3. It's very exciting. I'm finding all of the promotion around The Mandalorian and The Rise of Skywalker to be incredibly inspirational in this grand finale to my trilogy. So get caught up and go pick up a copy of the book for you or a friend. If you go to Amazon.com, if you got a friend who reads and likes sci-fi, gift them the book. That's the way that you can go and support the show. I don't do Patreon. I just ask for you to support my book writing. If you purchase the book, thank you. Please go to Amazon.com and leave a review, a positive review, please. If you didn't like it, just ignore that you read it. But leave a positive review on Amazon.com. It really would mean the world to me. And again, gift the book to yourself or a friend. Great holiday gift. Perfect stocking stuffer. Amazon.com, Jon Justice. You can go and check it out. All right, that's it. I've got a lot of Star Wars to watch this weekend. This weekend, it's Rogue One. Very excited. I'm looking at the calendar right here. Then we get into the original trilogy. We're so close. Thanks again. Have yourself a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you in the next few days. Really hope we all have fun watching The Mandalorian. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.